My name is Rachel, and I'm 32 years old. What I'm about to tell you is the most painful, frustrating, and ultimately transformative experience of my life. It involves a winning lottery ticket, the sum of $5 million, and my own mother deliberately setting it on fire because I wouldn't give a portion of it to my sister. And believe me, what happened next was even worse than that sounds, but it also led to a freedom I never thought possible. Before I dive into the absolute chaos that ensued, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were constantly expected to give, to sacrifice your own needs or desires for the sake of others, especially family? If that resonates with you, please hit the like button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support means the world. And if you want to hear more stories like this about finding your voice and standing up for yourself, make sure to subscribe. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. My family dynamic has always been complicated. My mother, Brenda, and my older sister, Jessica, were always incredibly close. They had this bond that often felt impenetrable, like a two-person club that I was perpetually standing outside of. From a young age, I felt like the odd one out, the less favored child. It wasn't overt cruelty most of the time, but 1,000 small slights. Jessica's achievements were celebrated with fanfare, mine with a nod. Her problems were family emergencies. Mine were things I should handle myself. My mother always seemed to side with Jessica in any disagreement, no matter how trivial. There was an unspoken expectation that I should facilitate Jessica's life, whether it was lending her money she never repaid, driving her places, or simply being a sympathetic ear while my own struggles were dismissed. I remember one time, I was saving up for a modest used car in college. I worked 2 jobs, ate ramen, did everything I could to scrape together the money. Jessica decided she needed a last-minute trip to the beach with her friends. She sweet-talked my mother, who then turned to me and said, "Rachel, can't you just lend Jessica some of your car money? She'll pay you back." I hesitated, explaining how hard I'd worked for it, how close I was to my goal. My mother's face hardened. "It's just a loan, Rachel. Family helps family. Are you saying you won't help your own sister?" The guilt trip was immediate and heavy. I ended up giving Jessica a significant chunk of my savings, money she, predictably, never paid back. My car purchase was delayed by months. That was just one small example, but it set the pattern. My needs were secondary to Jessica's wants, and my mother was the enforcer of this hierarchy. Despite this, I loved my family. I desperately wanted their approval, their genuine affection. I kept hoping that if I was good enough, successful enough, generous enough, I would finally be fully accepted. So I worked hard. I got a good job in accounting, saved diligently, lived within my means. I wasn't rich, but I was financially stable and independent. Jessica, on the other hand, drifted between jobs, always seemed to be in some kind of financial scrape, and relied heavily on my mother. This, in turn, meant my mother frequently asked me to step in and help Jessica out. These requests were always phrased as family obligation, never as something I had the right to refuse. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday, just another ordinary day. I had a habit of buying a single lottery ticket from the corner store on my way home from work. It was a small, harmless ritual, a tiny flutter of hope in the mundane. I usually forgot about the ticket until the next time I stopped at the store. But this time, I checked the numbers that evening. And then I checked them again. And again. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. $5 million. $5 million. It felt unreal, like a glitch in the Matrix. I sat there in my small apartment, staring at the ticket, the reality of it slowly sinking in. This wasn't just life-changing money. It was generational wealth. It was freedom from financial worry, the ability to help people I cared about, the chance to live a life I'd only dreamed of. My first instinct, fueled by years of ingrained family loyalty and a deep-seated desire for approval, was to tell my mother and sister. I imagined their excitement, their happiness for me. I pictured us celebrating, perhaps helping them out in ways that would genuinely improve their lives, not just bail them out of temporary problems. I thought this could be the thing that finally solidified my place in the family, the ultimate act of generosity that would prove my worth. Looking back, that impulse was a direct result of the toxic dynamic I'd grown up in, constantly seeking validation from the very people who withheld it. So I called my mother. My voice was trembling with excitement. "Mom," I said, "you are not going to believe this. I won the lottery." $5 million. There was a beat of silence on the other end, then a gasp. "Rachel? 5 million? Are you serious?" Her voice was high-pitched, a mixture of shock and, I thought, delight. "Yes, Mom, I'm serious. I have the ticket right here. I won." She immediately wanted me to come over. I was buzzing, still in disbelief, but eager to share the news in person. I drove to their house, the winning ticket tucked safely in my purse. When I got there, both my mother and Jessica were waiting, eyes wide. There were initial exclamations, hugs that felt a little too tight, a lot of, "Oh my God, Rachel," and "Can you believe it?" We sat down and they wanted to see the ticket. I showed it to them, this little piece of paper that held so much potential. They marveled at it, passing it back and forth. And then the conversation shifted. The initial shared excitement gave way to something else, something I recognized instantly from years of experience. It was the subtle, then not so subtle, pivot towards us. $5 million, my mother mused, her eyes distant. "That's enough to change all our lives." "Definitely," Jessica chimed in, leaning forward. "With that much, we could finally get Mom that new roof she needs. And I could pay off all my student loans and maybe put a down payment on a small place." I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had expected to help them, of course. That was part of my plan. But the way they said it, the immediate assumption that this money was ours, to distribute, grated on me. "Yes," I said carefully. "It's incredible. I've been thinking about how I can use it." My mother brightened. "Well, obviously, the first thing is to take care of family. Jessica's needs are immediate. Those loans are a burden, and she deserves a stable home." She looked at me, her expression one of absolute expectation. "And the roof, of course. That's been a worry for years." I took a deep breath. "Mom, I definitely want to help. But $5 million is a lot, and I need to be smart about it. I was thinking of investing most of it, setting up a secure future for myself, maybe buying a small house. For helping family, I was thinking I could set aside a specific amount, maybe a percentage, to assist with things like the roof, or helping Jessica with a portion of her loans, or maybe setting up a small fund for unexpected needs." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The warmth drained away, replaced by a cold, hard calculation in their eyes. "A specific amount?" Jessica repeated, her voice sharp. "What does that mean? Like how much?" "Well, I hadn't decided on an exact figure," I said, feeling defensive now. "But I was thinking maybe 50,000 for the roof, and maybe helping Jessica consolidate her loans and giving her 20 or 30,000 towards them. Something like that." Silence. Heavy, loaded silence. My mother stared at me, her face unreadable for a moment, then twisting into displeasure. 50,000, she finally said, her voice dangerously low. "Rachel, that's nothing. $5 million, and you're offering 50,000 for my roof? And 20 or 30,000 for your sister's debts. Jessica's loans are well over 100,000. "Yes, I know," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "But 50,000 is more than enough for the roof, probably with money left over. And 20 or 30,000 is a huge help towards Jessica's loans. It's not like I can just wipe out everyone's debt and still have enough to secure my own future." "Secure your own future?" My mother leaned forward, her voice rising. "What about our future? We are your family, Rachel. This money is a gift from God, a blessing, and it's meant to help the people who love you most." "But it's my ticket, Mom," I said, feeling increasingly cornered. "I bought it. I won it." "And who raised you?" she retorted, her voice gaining volume. "Who clothed you and fed you and put a roof over your head? Your family did. Now you have the chance to give back, truly give back, and you're talking about measly percentages and specific amounts. Jessica cut in, her tone injured. Yeah, Rachel, it's like you don't even care about us. After everything Mom's done for you, and everything I've always been there for you. This was a classic Jessica move, portraying herself as a supportive sister despite all evidence to the contrary. You're going to hoard $5 million? I'm not hoarding it. I protested, my voice shaking slightly. I'm trying to be responsible. $5 million sounds like an infinite amount, but it can go quickly if you're not careful. I want to make sure I'm set up that I can live comfortably and not end up not end up struggling. I didn't say like you too often seem to be, but the thought hung in the air. My mother stood up abruptly. This is unbelievable. $5 million and you're being selfish. We're your family, Rachel. Family shares everything. Share everything? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping me. Did you and Jessica share everything with me when I needed help? Did you pay me back for the money I lent Jessica for her beach trip? Did you offer to help me with my student loans?
No.
It was always me who was expected to give, and you who were expected to receive. That hit a nerve. My mother's face turned a dangerous shade of red. How dare you bring up ancient history?
This is different.
This is a fortune. This is a chance for us to live comfortably, for all of us. By all of us, I said, standing up as well. You mean you and Jessica, don't you? You mean I get to be the bank, and you get to decide how my money is spent. It's not just your money, Rachel, my mother yelled. It's a family windfall. We are a family. We support each other. Jessica needs this. I need this. We thought you loved us enough to share. I do love you, I shouted back, tears welling in my eyes, tears of frustration and pain. But this isn't about love. This is about entitlement. You feel entitled to my money just because you're my family. You haven't earned it, I did. I bought the ticket. And I raised you, she screamed, her hand reaching out towards the coffee table where the ticket lay. Everything you have, you owe to me. Before I could react, she snatched the lottery ticket. Mom, what are you doing? I cried, lunging towards her. If you're going to be selfish, she shrieked, backing away from me. If you're going to turn your back on your family when you have the chance to help them, then you don't deserve this money. Jessica stood frozen, watching, a look of shock mixed with something else I couldn't quite decipher. Maybe a hint of fear, maybe even anticipation. My mother didn't hesitate. She walked over to the fireplace, where a small fire was burning, and she held the lottery ticket, my $5 million winning ticket, over the flames. I screamed, rushing towards her, trying to grab her arm, to grab the ticket. She pulled back, her eyes blazing with fury. If I can't have it, she snarled, then neither can you. And she dropped it. The small piece of paper, my future, my dreams, fluttered down into the fire. The edges curled instantly, blackening. The ink faded. In seconds, it was engulfed, turning into a black, brittle crisp before disintegrating into ash. I stopped dead in my tracks. I stared at the fire, at the few flakes of ash that were all that remained. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't speak. I couldn't believe what had just happened. $5 million.
Gone.
Because I said no. Because I refused to be dictated to. My mother stood there, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Jessica remained rooted to the spot, her eyes wide, staring at the fireplace. The silence this time wasn't just heavy, it was deafening. It was the sound of a relationship shattering, of a boundary being crossed in the most destructive way possible. Finally, I found my voice, though it was thin and reedy.
You
burned it. My mother met my gaze, her expression a mixture of anger and, was that triumph? You brought this on yourself, Rachel, she said, her voice calmer now, but chillingly cold. If you had just agreed to do the right thing, to help your family, this wouldn't have happened. My jaw dropped. She was blaming me, after she had just destroyed $5 million out of spite. The right thing? I repeated, incredulous. Destroying my property, my winning ticket, because I wouldn't hand over money on demand is the right thing? It wasn't just your money. Jessica suddenly spoke, her voice shaky. It was a chance for all of us. It was my winning, I said, my voice gaining strength as the shock wore off and was replaced by a cold, furious resolve. I earned the chance to win it by buying the ticket. You didn't. Mom didn't. It was mine. And you... I looked directly at my mother, my eyes fixed on hers. You just showed me exactly who you are. I'm your mother, she practically yelled. A mother who would rather destroy her daughter's future than see her have something she wasn't willing to control or take from. I shot back. The dam had broken. All the years of feeling less than, of feeling like a perpetual ATM, of being overlooked and undervalued, came crashing to the surface. You didn't want to share the money, Mom. You wanted to control it. You wanted to decide who got what, and punish me when I dared to think for myself. That is not true. Isn't it? I challenged. Think about it. If you genuinely wanted to help Jessica, wouldn't you have just talked to me? Wouldn't you have been happy I won and trusted me to do what was right, maybe discussing how best to help? Instead, you immediately demanded huge sums and, when I hesitated, you resorted to this. I gestured to the fireplace, to the ashes. This wasn't about Jessica's loans or the roof. This was about power. This was about punishing me for not bending to your will. My mother looked away, but not before I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something that looked suspiciously like guilt, quickly masked by indignation. Get out, she said, her voice low and shaking. Gladly, I replied, my own voice trembling but firm. You know, I continued, taking a step back. For years, I tried so hard to make you proud, to get your approval. I thought money would finally do it. I thought sharing it generously would show you how much I cared, how much I wanted to be a real part of the family. But you just showed me that it was never about that. It was just about what you could get. And when you couldn't get exactly what you wanted, you'd rather burn it all down. I looked at Jessica, who was now avoiding my gaze. And you, I said to her, my voice softening slightly, but the sadness heavy. You just stood there and watched her do it. You didn't try to stop her. You were okay with my future being destroyed as long as it meant you might get a piece of it, or as long as I was punished for not giving you everything. Jessica finally looked up, her face pale. That's not fair, Rachel. It's perfectly fair. I cut her off. It's the truth. You benefited from Mom always putting you first, and you enabled her behavior towards me. And now you've seen her at her worst, and you didn't object. I walked towards the door. I'm leaving, I said. And I won't be back. Not after this.
You made your choice, Mom.
You chose to burn my future rather than accept my generosity on my terms. And you chose to destroy our relationship in the process. My mother didn't say anything. Jessica mumbled something I couldn't hear, or maybe chose not to. I opened the door and walked out, leaving them standing in the silence of their living room with the ashes of my lottery ticket in the fireplace. I got into my car and drove away. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't be there anymore. The tears came then, hot and fast, blurring my vision. Tears of grief, not just for the money, but for the final, definitive loss of the family I had always longed for but never truly had. The dream of winning the lottery wasn't just about financial freedom, it was also, for me, tied up in a desperate hope for familial acceptance. And they had shattered that hope into a million pieces and then burned the pieces. I drove for hours, eventually pulling over at a rest stop, curled up in the back seat, and cried until I was numb. When I finally stopped, a cold clarity settled over me. They had done their worst. They had taken something precious and destroyed it in front of me. And strangely, I was still standing. I was still alive. And what's more, I wasn't under their control anymore. The next morning, exhausted but with a strange sense of calm, I called the lottery commission. This is where the twist comes in. What my mother, in her rage, didn't know, or perhaps didn't think about, was that burning the physical ticket wasn't enough to actually destroy the winning claim. When I had gone to the lottery headquarters the day after I won, just before going to see my mother, I hadn't just verified the ticket. I had gone through the initial steps of claiming the prize. You don't just show up with a ticket and walk out with a check for $5 million. There's a process. You have to fill out forms, provide identification, choose how you want to receive the winnings, lump sum or annuity, and they verify the ticket's authenticity thoroughly. They take the physical ticket and give you paperwork, confirming your claim and outlining the next steps, which involve a waiting period while they process everything and perform security checks. So, while the physical ticket was indeed Ash, the claim was already registered in their system under my name. I explained the situation to the representative at the Lottery Commission, my voice shaking again, but this time with a mix of residual trauma and the quiet satisfaction of knowing my mother's act was ultimately futile in the grand scheme of things, though deeply damaging emotionally. I told them my mother had, in a fit of rage, destroyed the physical ticket after I had initiated the claim process. They were initially surprised, but once I provided my claim number and identification details, they were able to verify everything. The representative assured me that the claim was valid, and the destruction of the physical ticket after the claim was initiated did not invalidate the winnings. They would simply proceed with the claim based on the paperwork I had already submitted and the verification they had performed. I would receive the funds as planned. It was an incredible relief, of course. The money wasn't gone. My mother's malicious act hadn't actually cost me the financial freedom she wanted to deny me. But the emotional damage was still immense. The realization that my own mother was capable of such destructive, spiteful behavior towards me was a wound that would take a long time to heal. Knowing the money was safe gave me a different kind of power, the power to choose my response, the power to set boundaries without the fear of losing everything. My mother had tried to burn my future, and in doing so, she had inadvertently freed me. She had shown me, in the most undeniable way possible, that her love and acceptance were conditional, tied directly to my compliance and willingness to be exploited. The illusion I had clung to for so long, the hope that they would one day truly value me for me, was shattered. I didn't immediately tell my mother or Jessica that the money was safe. Part of me, the hurt part, wanted them to believe they had succeeded in destroying it, to let them live with the consequence of their action, even if that consequence was just the false belief of my financial ruin. It felt like a small measure of justice for the years of manipulation and the ultimate act of betrayal.
But more importantly, I needed space.
I needed time to process. I rented a small cabin by a lake, far away from everyone I knew. I spent weeks there, mostly alone, walking in nature, reading, and just thinking. I thought about my childhood, about all the instances where I had minimized my own needs to appease my family, about the constant anxiety of trying to win their favor, about the deep-seated belief I had developed that I wasn't quite enough unless I was serving them in some way. The lottery money, when it finally arrived in my bank account a few weeks later, felt different now. It wasn't just financial freedom, it was the tangible representation of my independence, the proof that I could create my own security, my own future, separate from my family's expectations and demands. I decided to be smart with the money, just as I had initially intended. I hired a financial advisor. I made conservative investments. I bought myself a modest, comfortable house in a different town. I didn't live lavishly. The true value wasn't in buying expensive things, but in the peace of mind, the security, and the ability to live life on my own terms. During this time, my mother tried to contact me. At first, her messages were a mix of continued blame. You shouldn't have made me so angry. And strangely, an almost immediate shift back to expectation. Now that some time has passed, have you thought about how you're going to help us? It was as if the burning incident was just a temporary setback, a dramatic punctuation mark in the ongoing negotiation of how much of my money they were entitled to. This confirmed everything I had realized, that their focus wasn't on our relationship, but on what they could gain from me. I didn't respond to those messages. I couldn't. The hurt was too raw. After a couple of months, I decided I was ready to communicate, but on my terms. I wrote them an email. I didn't mention the money at all. Instead, I focused on the impact of their actions and the history of our dynamic. I explained, calmly but firmly, how their constant demands, their lack of support for me, and the ultimate act of burning the ticket had destroyed my trust and deeply wounded me. I told them that I needed space and that our relationship, as it had been, was over. I stated that any future contact would need to be based on mutual respect and a recognition of my boundaries, something they had consistently failed to provide. Their response was predictable. My mother called, screaming, denying everything, calling me cruel and ungrateful. Jessica texted, accusing me of abandoning them just when they needed me most, the assumption being that I had somehow acquired more money despite the burn ticket. They didn't apologize for burning the ticket. They didn't apologize for their entitlement. They didn't even acknowledge the depth of my pain. Their reaction only reinforced that I had made the right decision. I didn't engage further with their anger or their demands. I held firm in my boundary. I changed my phone number. I blocked them on social media. It was incredibly difficult. There were moments of intense loneliness, moments where the ingrained desire for their acceptance would surface, making me question if I was being too harsh. But then I would remember the look on my mother's face as she dropped that ticket into the fire, and the look on Jessica's face as she stood by and watched. And the resolve would return. With the financial security the lottery provided, I was able to prioritize my emotional well-being. I started seeing a therapist. This was crucial in helping me unpack years of trauma and understand the toxic dynamics I had grown up with. I learned about codependency, about emotional manipulation, about the FOG, fear, obligation, and guilt that my mother had expertly used to control me. Therapy gave me tools to process the betrayal and build my self-esteem, which had been so eroded by years of feeling inadequate in my family's eyes. I also used some of the money to pursue things I was genuinely passionate about, things I'd put off because I was always prioritizing family obligations or saving every penny. I took art classes, something I'd loved as a child but had been told was impractical. I volunteered at an animal shelter, something that brought me immense joy. I built a small, supportive network of friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them or give them. It took a long time, years, before the pain of the betrayal dulled. The scar is still there, a reminder of how deeply family can wound you. But the wound is no longer open. About a year after the incident, I decided to break the silence, not to reconcile in the traditional sense, but to inform them, in a way that was detached and factual, that their destructive act had not achieved its intended outcome. I sent a short, neutral email to their old email addresses. I simply stated that the Lottery Commission had been able to process my claim despite the destruction of the physical ticket and that I had received the full winnings. I did not say I was sharing anything. I did not invite contact. I just stated the fact. The silence that followed was more profound than anything before. I can only imagine the reaction on their end. The realization that their act of spite had been utterly pointless in preventing me from getting the money, that they had destroyed our relationship for nothing, must have been a bitter pill to swallow. There was no angry response this time, no demands. Just silence. Years have passed since then. My relationship with my mother and sister is virtually non-existent. We are technically still family by blood, but the emotional connection, the trust, the love that should underpin a family, that was burned up with the lottery ticket in the fireplace. I occasionally hear snippets of information through distant relatives that Jessica is still struggling financially, that my mother complains about my lack of contact. They never mention the lottery, never mention the burning of the ticket. It's the great unsaid thing between us. Part of me grieves for the family I wish I had, the mother-daughter bond one craved. But a larger part of me feels an immense sense of liberation. I am no longer bound by their expectations, their manipulation, their constant neediness. I am free to live my life according to my own values, to build relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not obligation and guilt. The $5 million gave me financial freedom, but the burning of the ticket gave me emotional freedom. It forced a confrontation that I might otherwise have avoided, a confrontation with the reality of my family's dynamic and my place within it. It pushed me to prioritize my own well-being and to set boundaries that were long overdue, even though those boundaries meant a painful separation. The twist, that the money was safe all along. transformed the narrative from one of tragic loss due to family malice into one of profound personal empowerment despite that malice. My mother tried to take away my future, but all she did was illuminate the path towards a better one, a future where I was no longer defined by her expectations or limited by her control. Looking back, I wouldn't wish the pain I went through on anyone, but I also wouldn't trade the lessons I learned or the strength I found within myself. It was a harsh, brutal way to learn that you cannot buy love or acceptance from people who are determined to misunderstand you and control you. True belonging comes from finding people who value you for your heart, not for your wallet or your willingness to sacrifice yourself. So, that's my story. It's raw, it's painful, but it's also a story of survival and finding strength after betrayal. Thank you for listening. If you've gone through something similar, dealing with toxic family dynamics, or having to set painful boundaries, please share your experience in the comments below. It helps to know you're not alone. If this story resonated with you, if you understand what it feels like to be betrayed by the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, please hit that like button. And if you want to hear more stories about navigating difficult relationships, finding your voice, and rebuilding your life after trauma, don't forget to subscribe. Remember to speak your truth, value yourself, and know that setting boundaries is not selfish. It's an act of self-preservation. You deserve to be happy and safe, even if it means creating distance from the people you once thought were your whole world.